If you've tried magnetizing the new Cadian Shock Troops, you may have noticed that you can't just drop the magnets into the arms. In my previous video, I tried filling these cavities with green stuff, but I wasn't satisfied. Thankfully, viewer Matthew Seidel pointed me to a better way. They told me about YouTuber Miniature Hobbyist, and he had something to teach me. Today, I'm gonna pass that newfound knowledge on to you. We're diving into a jar of Sprue Goo. To make our Sprue Goo, we'll need old, empty sprues, 100% acetone, a glass jar, and I'll have more to say about this later, and gloves. An important note about the gloves. While not a carcinogen, acetone is a mild skin irritant and a severe eye irritant, so I recommend wearing gloves. I've chosen to use latex gloves as they fare slightly better than most readily available glove materials. Butyl gloves would be ideal, but they cost roughly 10 times as much as latex, so I opted to cheap out on this. If you can't use latex, you can settle for other cheaper materials as long as you're not planning on submerging your hand into the acetone and accept that they might be one-time uses. The process is simple. All we need to do is clip the sprues into pieces small enough to fit into the jar. The smaller the pieces, the quicker they will melt. I'm planning to try a few things with this Sprue Goo, so I chose to fill the jar about halfway. Once we have the desired amount, all we have to do is pour in the acetone. As the plastic melts, it's going to sink into the acetone, so we only need to fill it about 2/3, possibly even less depending on how big the pieces we used are. I ended up pouring more than intended anyways and covered all the plastic. It might be a good idea at this point to clean up any spillage that you may have. With that done, we just need to seal up everything and let the acetone go to work. We'll come back tomorrow and see what we have. After just 2 hours, the plastic has melted significantly. I had previously prepared a jar just as a little bit of an experiment, and what I've noticed so far is that the coloration of the acetone inside the jar I had prepared previously has a very green tint to it, while the acetone in the jar that I've only just prepared is still quite clear. I'm very curious to see if that holds true after the full 24 hours has passed. While I waited for the plastic to melt, I took one of the arms which I had previously used green stuff in the cavity of, and carved out that green stuff so that I would have a fresh place to start. Once the following day had come, I took a look at the new jar that we prepared, and sure enough, there was no green. I'm not sure what caused my old jar to have the coloration, but for now it would have to remain a mystery. If any of you watching this right now knows what happened, go ahead, leave me a comment. I'd love to know. I also checked the consistency of the Sprue Goo, and as far as I could tell, there was no difference in malleability. What I did notice is that the acetone had started to eat through the lid of these mason jars I purchased. This is definitely something to keep an eye out for when purchasing the glass jars to do this with. It doesn't do you any good if your container's only good for a few days at most. Now, instead of waiting for a fresh jar of Sprue Goo, I decided to just go ahead and use the prepared jar to fill in the cavity. The goo was easy to work with, but getting the air out of the cavity was tricky. I think in the future I'll use just a little goo at a time, layering it on, rather than try to get it all at once. Satisfied with the fill, I removed some of the excess, then waited overnight to let the goo cure, for real this time. Upon inspection, I found the new plastic to be porous. This might be because of my method for getting the air out. I'll have to do some tests in the future to see if this is a common issue. For today's purpose, that was fine though. I filed down the area and grabbed my drill. I had to be gentle with the drill as the plastic was very soft and the drill ate through it quite quickly. Once I had a hole, I went for a test fit, and the magnet decided it wasn't coming back out. That'll be fine though, especially once it's painted. And there we go. The Sprue Goo was a success. But was it better than green stuff? I think so. I think the Sprue Goo has a better finish overall than green stuff. And because it still has acetone in the goo when you fill it, it creates a real bond to the plastic, whereas green stuff just kind of grabs on. Now I think what it ultimately comes down to is, what do you have on hand? If you already have green stuff, there's no reason to go out of your way to create this Sprue Goo. The green stuff is going to work just fine. But if you want something just a little nicer, if requiring a little more effort, I think Sprue Goo is the way to go. And I'm certainly going to be using this more in the future. It's just one more tool that I've added to my tool chest. If you found the video helpful, think about giving it a like. And if you want to hang out in the future, think about subscribing. I'm Tabletop Ackley. Thanks for hanging out with me today.